This is where it all started. The boat came in here. This is where the boat came. This is where I came to the harbour here. That was my first place in Bodo.
She is not Norwegian, but has lived in Norway longer than most Norwegians have been alive. An icon of sorts, she needs go by only her first name, Shirley. Shirley Bottolfsen's story is well known throughout Scandinavia. Her work with the poor, her countless acts of providing for others, sometimes in ways that often offended, even shocked some people. But who exactly is this Shirley, the woman behind the character of Shirley Aksjon, or Shirley of Action? To find out, you have to at least look back on the story of how a 21-year-old Irish girl from Dublin could make a life here in Bodo with a Norwegian merchant sailor husband she had met only 23 days earlier. Shirley's initial wake-up call that she had entered a new and very different land came as she first stepped foot on the docks of her new home and met her new husband's family.
We came down the gangway, went out, and in Ireland, you know, and when we meet our family, we're completely like this, but they didn't, because it wasn't usually that those days. Just came and said, "Good dog, good dog." I reacted because it was so different.
Being part Irish on my mother's side, I wanted to spend some time with the Irish Sparrow, as she calls herself, get to really know her. Just the two of us, no film crews, just Shirley and myself and a few cameras rolling in the background. One very new foreigner now making my home in Bodo, and someone who has literally seen Bodo grow from just a small town back in the 1950s. I've been here for a year. 1 year in Bodo. You've been here 64?
I came on the 6th of April, 1956.
I cannot imagine the difference, the changes that you have seen in this city compared to what I've seen. I've come to a modern city, a smart city.
And it's cosmopolitan. Bodo is a cosmopolitan city.
How smart was it when you came?
6,000 people.
Coming from Dublin, a thriving international city of 600,000 people, Shirley found Bodo frighteningly small. But the real shock came when she learned she would be living outside of Bodo, on the outskirts of a very tiny village called Solstrømmen.
I never forget my first night here.
Her memories of that very first day in her new home, where her new husband lived with his parents and siblings, tells the story of a young woman who had entered a new world, one that made her feel she had traveled back in time. From the food to the basic amenities of life, everything was strange.
They have a thing called fenalår here in Bodo, in Norway, which is a kind of a meat that they dry. It's a lamb.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
Yeah, when you first get it. But when you come from Ireland and Dublin and from London, and you get this very dry meat, you know, and they this is the big thing, you know, this was an honor.
Right.
And they weren't very pleased I was coming anyway, but so my father-in-law sat there and my mother-in-law sat there, and they just looked at me, and they didn't speak English, because people in those days didn't, especially the older people, they weren't speaking English in those days.
Right.
So later in the evening, nature called, and I wanted to go to the loo. Okay, that should be an easy thing. I should go. So even my husband told me, well, you've got to put a coat on, you've got to put your boots on, you've got to have a scarf, and you've got your gloves. And I said, but I only want to go to the toilet. Yeah, we have no toilet inside the house.
Shirley was stunned to learn it was a 50-meter walk through a blizzard just to reach the outhouse.
So we walked out in the snow, very cold, windy, to right at the other end of the cowshed, opened the door, and there was a 3-seater. There was a hole for one smaller one and one bigger and a bigger one.
Oh my gosh.
And it was very windy there, and you had to hold on to the door, you know. So this I thought I'd never seen anything like that. I'd never seen anything like that.
But the real shock came at the end of that first night, when after traveling all the way from Ireland, she just wanted a warm bath. Her new father-in-law fetched a large metal tub and set it right in the middle of the room.
Put a towel on the floor. Now all the family was sitting around. There was my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and my father-in-law, all wanting to see this. And they filled the water up, and they said, "I should go." And I thought, Ireland, in those days, we didn't show our bodies. Irish Catholics, we were very, very private. I never saw my mother or my father naked, so this were not things that you do today like they have
No, wait.
today.
They were expecting you to take a bath?
Take off my clothes, because they did it most probably, but not me. I couldn't do that to save my life. I hadn't taken off my clothes for a husband. Just about, So I didn't take a bath.
When you arrived in Norway at 21, newly married to a Norwegian, did you feel welcome here?
In some ways, yes. I was going to come back to something very special. My father-in-law, as I told you, he didn't like red hair. And I was different. I came from a completely different background. So it was very difficult for me to understand that. Without sounding horrible, and I don't really want to do this, but their eating, the way they ate and everything, was completely different. For example, this is the way it was. If they had fish, they put it onto the table. They had it on. They put all the leftover was put on the table. Their manners were completely different. They ate off their knives, and this completely shattered me because I had never been used to anything like that. But I couldn't speak Norwegian. It was very difficult, and I was feeling sad, and lonely. I was missing my family. And my family were kind of writing to me, say, "Shirley, should we sell you a food packet?" Because they thought I was like living in an igloo. They thought there were bears all over everywhere. I mean, I was way up in the God's forgotten country.
Immediately following their marriage, Shirley's brand new husband headed back out to sea for his work, where he spent most of his life. He left behind a young bride who was desperate to find a way to connect with this new foreign world, her new life. It took Shirley some time, but the adventurous young woman finally found that connection.
So what did I do? God help poor Shirley. I got all the kids, and now there's some of them are 70. I taught them to dance. We moved the sitting room, everything in the kitchen, everything in the sitting room was moved, all the chairs, and all the kids from all around the island there. Not all the kids, but majority, all learned to dance with Oh Diana, all these things, and I taught them to dance. We couldn't speak to each other because I couldn't speak Norwegian, they couldn't speak Norwegian, they couldn't speak English, but they were so nice, and the kids would come running around, they kind of come, and when I came out they'd run away, because they were afraid of me in the beginning. And I thought, well, I've always loved kids, I've always loved people, I've always loved talking. So I thought, well, I've got to find some way of communication, and I did by dancing. And I taught them all, and it's so funny today when I see them now, great-grandfather, great-grandfathers say, "Shirley, do you remember when we learned to dance in the sitting room?"
Yeah, yes.
Ulla Per Olsen remembers well how the strange-speaking red-headed foreigner taught him to dance as a young boy.
Vi kunne jo ikke danse nå, og så skulle vi lære oss å danse rock. Og det var, men vi fikk det til. Du lærte oss det, og vi hadde veldig, veldig trivelig. Jeg var jo ikke vant med fremmed, og spesielt ikke irsk. Så det var jo noe helt nytt. Så, men jeg tror vi fant tonen ganske fort.
Yeah, we did it very well. Oh, I remember every inch of this, and there was no houses here.
I decided to take Shirley back to Salstrømmen to try and relive a few of her first memories of Norway. And before we had even left Bodo, those memories came flooding back. You're telling me that this main road out of Bodo to Salstrøm was a dirt road?
It was a dirt road, yep.
To really know Shirley is to know that she must stop and talk with anyone she comes in contact with. like these students preparing to fish at Solstrømmen.
Showing you two can look like this if you stay in Norway. I've been a lot of times here fishing with my husband and with my children. And in the old days, they didn't have the bridge here. This is a wonderful thing. You had to take a boat, you know, you had to take a little ferry that went over from there from Solstrømmen over to the other side. Oh, this is beautiful around here. Beautiful colours, autumn. I'm at the autumn of my life, and this is autumn. Look at these kids. Here's the boats coming in. It's just on the turn of the tide.
The 60 years that have passed since Shirley first arrived in Norway seemed to melt away as she pointed out old familiar spots like the tiny Solstrømmen grocery store.
Well, now this is where all the post used to come in, and there was the shop. Now it's all different, of course.
And the house just outside Solstrømmen, where Shirley first lived more than 62 years ago. Though we were delayed briefly in getting out of the car to see the home, as Shirley wrapped up a phone call with one of her grandchildren.
Happy birthday, dear Dave. Happy birthday, dear Jon Magnus. Happy birthday and have a lovely day. Happy birthday to you. Hey! The kitchen door.
It was easy to tell Shirley was quite excited to walk around the old property she had once called home.
Down here is the cellar, which we in the old days didn't have freezer or anything, so you kept all the food cold down in the cellar. I always felt there was a ghost there, so I never went down there. We used to go up a lot into the mountains here. This was all part of the kingdom of
You
this.
must be loving this.
Oh, I love it. It's all coming back. Thank you, Rick. Thank you for the memories.
And of course, Shirley insisted on meeting the new people living here.
Now we're going to see if he's home. Hey, how do you put Mama Papa? Oh, this is fun.
In true Shirley style, she just walked right in
Anybody home? Hello? Hello?
and straight into the living room,
Hello, it's only me.
sending the man of the house running in his underwear for his pants.
Yeah. And they picked up this and they took up a store aluminium boiler.
But the family didn't seem surprised, recognizing who this intruder was, and was soon showing Shirley a pamphlet of the house when they had first moved
Well,
in.
here's the better.
With her first memories now fresh in her mind, Shirley told me how she eventually settled into life here in northern Norway. She had 2 children, and she and her husband were happy to finally get their own home in Bodo.
I felt I'd come back to civilization. I felt I'd come back to life.
And while she was not yet the Shirley Bottolfsen people know today, she was a curiosity because of her Irish accent, red hair, and spirit of humor. But just as Shirley thought life couldn't get any better, fate dealt her a major blow. Shirley's husband, the very reason she had come to Norway in the first place, was suddenly killed in a mysterious accident on board the ship of which he was working.
You know, he left here, a young 36-year-old man, on the 14th of December. 17th of December, a priest came up to me and told me, Shirley, your husband was killed today on the ship. Our world fell apart. I told my children, we were young, very much in love, all the future in the future. Suddenly our life fell completely apart. How did he fall? He fell 11 meters on his head. He died after around about 15 minutes, to think about that. They went to look for him because he didn't come to eat his dinner at 12 o'clock on the ship. And they went to look for him. And they found him down at the end, fallen onto the bottom of the ship in the hold. His head was always unrecognizable.
Though his death was ruled an accident, it left many questions in Shirley's head because of her husband's experience on ships and a very rushed investigation into his death.
I can't understand this. Shirley, you've just got to take it. He has been killed on the ship. No more answers, no more questions. but I will never know.
To this day, Shirley continues to visit her husband's grave every 17th of December, the anniversary of his death.
Such a long time ago. You know, we don't really know what loneliness is till you really are lonely. It broke my heart.
Shirley, at that stage in life, was still relatively unknown, and for the next 13 years struggled to finish raising her children and just survive. Then, in 1983, she remarried a prominent dentist, and while life was once again opening up, Shirley felt unaccepted again.
He was a dentist. He was friends with all the best people in the town here. You know, he was one of the ones in the Rotary and all these things. And they didn't accept me at all. Kind of when I suddenly married him, they thought, here comes her. When I went to a party or anything with it freeze. When I came into the room, they didn't like me, they didn't want me there. And then when I became famous and that, Jante.
Regardless, Shirley felt blessed just to be loved again. And 3 years into her second marriage, at the age of 53 years old, a spark ignited in Shirley's soul. Shirley Bottolfsen became Shirley Bottolfsen, completely dedicating herself to helping others.
I'm dangerous when I get my hat on.
She began by raising money in the Glashuset, money for people struggling to survive as she had years before, the homeless, drug addicts, abused women, and rising number of refugees coming to Bodo.
Because it could be anybody, Rick. It can be you. It can be anybody. It can be our children. It can be our grandchildren. It can be anybody who can be criminal or can be narcoman or anything. We just thank God that they're not.
Shirley says at first her efforts were not appreciated.
Well, you see, they were very embarrassed. Bodo was very embarrassed by me having a foreigner come here. I'm proud of it because Norway sends so much bloody money out to all the other countries and they do so much money everywhere else, and that somebody has to do something to get some money back to help the people who really need it.
Some people even wanted her out of Bodo.
I had one man came up and he said, I'm going to drive when I was on the glasses. I said, Shirley Bottolfsen, I skal kjøre deg på flyplass. I'll drive you to the airport and I'll put you on the first plane out here. I don't want you here. And they call me a gnagsår, you know, a sore. The mayor here in the town called me a gnagsår. But I don't care if I'm a gnagsår as long as I can help.
But seeing Shirley's dedication over the years, Bodo finally embraced her.
Somebody has to go out with that little bucket.
Shirley's work in helping others began drawing attention in newspapers, on TV, and even a film in 2005 focusing on the now iconic Shirley Bottolfsen.
Tusen takk skal du ha. Ha det bra. Tusen takk.
The Glashuset is kind of like Shirley Central.
Oh, definitely. It's my second home.
You have been down here many, many times.
Oh my God, I've been here ever since it opened. I used to stand out here in the snow. It was an ordinary street, you know, with no glass, nothing. An ordinary street, and I sat here, and I stood here in the rain and all this. Hey.
You know there have been a lot of people who love you. There have been a lot of people who have not loved you.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people who wanted to get rid of you.
Oh, yeah. I had people who would hate me. Or one of my neighbors would love to get rid of me.
What do you think about people who might make fun of you or think you're kind of a comical character?
Well, if they want to think that way, let them think that way. I know some people I think are very comical. But no, I just take it all. You know, the older you get, it just goes in one ear and out the other, and you don't really care. You don't give a damn. You do what you believe in. And I believe in doing things to help people. And I've always been a little bit strange, so okay, of course there are people who don't like me. Some people think I'm a chatterbox, which I am. Some people get irritated by me. But I understand that. I forgive them all. God bless them. I will go on as long as I can.
Over the last 30 years, Shirley Bottolfsen has become somewhat of a legend in Norway, an unstoppable force in providing for the needy. Her scrapbooks tell an incredible story of her charitable efforts and the many famous people she's met as a result. People like American Vice President Lyndon Johnson, and the President of Ireland.
You know, I've met the Pope. Pope John was a saint. And I met him in Tromsø, and I was very proud to meet him. I dress myself up in Tina Turner. I do anything for money, but I won't go naked because that would frighten the life of everybody.
Tragically, Shirley lost her second husband 6 years ago, in 2012. With her 2 children now grown and raising their own families in other parts of Norway, and at the age of 78, Shirley again faced incredible loneliness, a feeling she had known throughout various periods of her life in Bodo. But her work has given her the strength to override the loneliness this time.
That's part of life is going on.
Shirley spends a lot more time here in her home these days. She's been forced to substantially slow down her efforts to help people. Her age and health are just beginning to catch up with her. Yet the woman still makes her bread runs, as she calls them, 7 nights a week, delivering bread to the people who need it most. Shirley picks up bread and other bakery goods from shops like Bodo Bakery after it is closed in the evening. And she always needs help just getting the cases of bread into her car. But she says she calls on people who are just passing by. In this case, 3 Canadian military NATO members who were more than happy to help get Shirley on her way to make her deliveries.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming, Canada.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
She then drives from shelter to shelter, providing the much-needed supplies.
Og så har vi veldig fine julebrød.
Places like the women's shelter depend on her nightly deliveries.
Du har fått koteletter, er det det?
Ja, du fikk masse koteletter I dag, og så fikk du sånn.
There's also the men's homeless center.
Så vi
Så
går og
fryser
henter
vi.
kasse, og så får du den. Så har du fyll opp.
Skal jeg la hjelpe deg?
Ja.
And the Salvation Army.
Hva er det for noe?
Det heter skånd.
10 years in the same car she has driven for 25 years, no matter what the weather. Shirley says the only thing that helps her fight off the tremendous loneliness she now lives with is helping others.
I think the best thing, the nicest thing of all, Rick, is to be needed. That's people need you. And that for me is the most important. And when I go out with food or go out with this, people need me. And they still need me. I have different things I do. Even though I'm not out on the street every day now, I still do different things to help people. And the feeling of being needed, that's the finest thing. People say, what are your, what's your philosophy in life? I say, well, I'll tell you one day, it's very simple. And I go around to schools and I talk to them. I say, one of the most important things is a smile. One of the most important. Give a smile, you get a smile, normally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And number 2, to say thank you. Thank you is a very little word, but so important. So many people don't say it today. They just take everything. I saw my grandchildren. They don't even say thank you.
Yeah.
It's so important because when you say thank you, you give something. And people feel, oh, good, I've done something, You thank you, and you make a friend. But then the third thing is to give a big hug, to hug. Because when you give a hug, and that you can do in Norway now, you couldn't do it years ago.
Right.
And that means friendship. And the last thing is never give up. Never, even how tough it is get, never give up. And I've never given up.
Shirley, for all you have given, all you have done for people here in Bodo, has Bodo given back?
Yeah, they have. I'll tell you one lovely, lovely thing, and this means the world to me. So one day I was out here painting the house. I was up on the ladder, and there came 2 men. They said, "Shirley, what you doing up there?" "Here, you see what I'm doing? I'm basing." He said, "Well, you can't. You're 82 years old. Stand up there." I said, "Why not? I can't afford to have anybody, so I'm doing it myself." So they went away, and a few days later, there came 4 people, 1 woman and 3 men. They said, "Shirley, we want to do something for you. You've done so much for Bodo and so much. I have a home and I have a children's home down in Lithuania. I've done, and I'm up in Finnmark, I've done things. And then I said, no, we want to help you." And I desperately needed help. But I thought, no. I said, no, I felt ashamed. And then I thought, "Shirley, what the hell are you thinking about? You know how much pleasure it gives when you give something. Why do you want to stop these people who want to give you something back? Why should you take it from them? And I said, yes. They came 50 people here, Rick. They painted the whole house. Firms gave me the new bathroom. They gave me a kitchen. They gave me everything. So they really have given something back. They gave me that dugnad. That saved my home.
You were recently in the hospital.
Yeah.
Which I remember Kristen saying, Rick, Shirley's in the hospital. I'm like, is she okay? You really caused a lot of concern in the community.
I was really bad.
People were really worried about you.
Yeah, because it really was bad. And it's really, I've gone through a year, which has been a terrible year, because I fell twice. I've got a big sore here. My ankle was like this. My arm was bad. And my neighbour came over and said, Shirley, what on earth happened to you? You look as if you've been in the war, you know, and I was feeling desperate. So we're going to send you to hospital so you can go and have an x-ray. I went there and a very nice young doctor, they put me into the x-ray and everything, and I said, well, I know I haven't broken anything. He said, you've got a really bad bruise, you've gone over on it. And then he turned around and said, you know, you've got beautiful legs. And I thought, oh, goodness gracious, this is wonderful. You know, Dr. Taylor, young. But he didn't mean it that way. He said, because you're so old, you haven't broken anything. Your legs are very strong. And then there was some crutches here, 4 months. I was going crazy. I couldn't walk, you know, everything. Oh. And then I really did feel lonely. I had no family here. I know so many people over Norway. And everybody thought kind of, oh, Shirley's got so many visitors, you know. I hadn't any visitors. Nobody came. Even if they just came to say, hey, or ring me or something, but nobody did. It's
kind of like the prettiest girl at the dance thing.
Yeah,
nobody goes up to ask her to dance because everybody else will.
Yeah, but that's
and so she doesn't get to dance.
That's the trouble. Then I went out on Facebook, telling the truth, saying I'm very lonely. I made so many friends. I made 20 friends who I've now got. All very, very lonely people who really are lonely, from 17 up to 80. We don't talk about loneliness. We talk about everything.
You told me earlier this evening that you will never be Norwegian.
No, I couldn't. I can't.
But don't you think that you pretty much earned being able to be called a Norwegian Irish woman?
I'm so proud to be Irish. I'm one of the luckiest people in the world to be born in Ireland.
But what's wrong with being considered both? Because you've earned it, hon.
No, because I'm Irish and I'm so proud. I don't want to be anything else. I could have been Norwegian for a long time ago. They keep saying, oh, you know, no, you go to sea, you don't become a fish. And I'm going to be Irish to the day I die. I am so Irish in myself, in my thoughts, in everything. There's so many, and I don't mean this badly, but there are so many different things in Norway that I don't like with the people, that I could never be one of them. I could never be one of them, because they don't think in the same way. Our sense of humours are different. You try telling a Norwegian an American joke, or an Irish joke.
I've learned that the hard way, being married to a Norse woman.
Yeah. Well, I hope she's got a good sense of humour.
She loves me. I'll put it that way.
Anyway, Norwegians are long angry. We Irish, we explode, but we're very quick. But it takes 3-4 days before they get over.
Huh?
They take it and they don't say anything, and you do everything you can to charm them, but it doesn't help, you know. It has to go through that 4 days of anger because they were long since as they go.
You may be in your 80s, but Shirley, you seem so vibrant and young. You've still got that 21-year-old spirit from when you first came to Norway. Do you think it's possible there might be another man?
No. I could never have, no, I quite honestly, I just couldn't bear it anymore. I've got 2 husbands, I've got my 2 children, I've done my duty, I'm finished. No, because people have said to me, I've even been invited out sometimes, and I said, no, I'm sorry, I've got the end of that line. I don't want, you become eccentric maybe. I love being by myself. Yeah. I love being here, I love this room.
Spending more time at home these days isn't all bad, according to this now great-grandmother. Her home is a virtual museum of art and memories of a very full life. You consider yourself eccentric?
Of course, if I'm not eccentric, who is?
She now spends a little time each day with her dozen or so pet hedgehogs.
But this is one, he was coughing this morning, so I took him in and gave him special treatment, gave him some special medicine I have for him, and talked to him and comfort him.
However, the real loves of her life today are her two furry companions, Sheena and Tim the tomcat.
I've never had so much love in my life as I get from that cat.
Wow.
It's true.
Animals can be that way.
Yeah, I've never, Sheena is furry, but she's a little bit, she loves me, but that cat absolutely gives me more love now. I've never had so much love in my life from anybody as I get from that cat.
Her deep love for her pets is the main reason Shirley has already made plans for when she is gone someday.
I shall also be cremated, but the day I go, my dog and my cat will also be, they're going to put them off. She's 8, and I hope I live so, because, Rick, I want my dog to be happy when I'm gone. I want my cat to be happy when I'm gone.
Yeah.
You've no guarantee that they're so dependent on me, because we've been living so close that I don't want anybody else to have them. And I love them so much that I want to get them both. I've talked to the dear lady, they will be cremated and they will be with me. So I went to the Fylkesman here in Bodo. I said, look, this is a woman. She said, Shirley, where would you? Well, actually, I thought I'd like to have my ashes put in the glass house. And the woman said, oh my God, Shirley, no, you can't have it in the glass house. Yeah, because you'd never get rid of me.
Someday when Shirley's not here, how do you want this community to look back and speak of you?
I don't know. I've had that a lot of people said to me, Shirley, you know what's going to do. They lived before I came. They live after, because nobody is unreplaceable. I don't want people to be, that they can be sorry. I don't want people to say, well, we have to be, at last she's gone. But I don't want them to grieve too much, because that's part of life, that you go on, you know. No, I want just people, I did the best I could.
62 years in Norway, and half of that time spent completely dedicated to helping others. And Shirley points out that her public and private self are two very different people.
There's Shirley, who lives here in Irish widow, Little Sparrow, who lives here in her house with her dog and her cats and her pigs. And there's also Shirley Action.
And she says the two Shirleys have very different feelings about her life in Bodo.
I'm the happiest person in this world, but the loneliest.
I wanted to end my time getting to know Shirley by bringing back one of her happiest moments in Norway. That time 60 years ago when she taught the kids of Solstrømmen to dance.
Oh, thank you. I love that song. It makes me very happy when you do. I have it on another.
All these years that you've spent here in Norway and in Bodo, have you ever thought about going back to Ireland?
No, but I have felt homesick every time that the snow comes on the mountains. We don't have much snow in Ireland, you know. But my home is in Norway.
But when Irish eyes are smiling.
Thank you, Bodo. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for helping me. And thank you for being you, all of you.